Really quick before we get into this video, at the time this video comes out, from 3 PM to 6 or 7 PM BST, I will be streaming live on the official Total War Twitch channel in a head-to-head campaign versus my eternal nemesis, the Great Book of Grudges. I'll be playing as Oxyotl and he'll be playing as Taurox, so it's sure to be an interesting one. If you want to see that, then head on over to twitch.tv/Total War or click the link in the description and show your support, because let's be honest, I need all the help I can get. Oh, and if that doesn't convince you, we're both going to be cosplaying our legendary lords, and here's a little sneak peek of my incredibly accurate Oxyotl costume. If that doesn't convince you to come watch, I don't know what will. Okay, now onto the video. Hello and welcome back to another video on the Silence and the Fury DLC. Today we're going to be going over exactly how to play Oxyotl, who is the new Chameleon Lord coming to the Lizardmen. We're going over his faction effects, his starting locations, his Lord effects, and of course all the new units that are coming with his DLC and exactly how they work. So first things first, starting locations. In both campaigns he actually starts in the Frozen City, which is at the top of the map and not actually in Lustria, which is very refreshing. It's not too bad, but with Oxyotl travelling the map constantly and the massive amount of enemies nearby, it means you're often leaving your lands undefended, which can get a little tough to handle before you get your second army going. This is probably a little bit worse in Mortal Empire since there are way more enemies nearby, but once you get on a roll and get that second army set up, you should be fine. Now for his faction effects. First up we have the Silent Sanctums. These are basically the lizard version of Undercities. Once you have accumulated 8 Sanctum gems, you can create a Silent Sanctum under any settlement you have vision of. These cost no gold, but use up your Sanctum gems, but you can always make more. The primary building grants vision over the target settlement, and upgrading it gives you vision over all the adjacent regions. There are also 2 other building types you can choose to build. Both provide buffs to you and debuffs to enemies. The operations section includes buildings which reduce recruitment cost and global recruitment duration, increase your casualty replenishment rate and vigor loss reduction, grant you upkeep reduction and income increases, give a chance for enemy armies to be ambushed by Sanctum patrol armies, and allow you to travel using the visions of the old ones to that Sanctum and provides ward save. For this last one you can only have one of these types of buildings at a time, but can switch the settlement as many times as you want. The armory buildings provide abilities to use in battle, buffs to melee troops, ranged troops, and general toughness for your entire army. You can only have 2 buildings in each Silent Sanctum, and you can choose to have a mix of operations and armory, or just have 2 from one. I like to use these Silent Sanctums to scout out the map and prepare a region for me to take over. If I'm about to enter a region, then of course I'm going to want to be buffed when I go in there. His other main faction mechanic is the visions of the old ones. Periodically, missions will pop up on the map that require you to get rid of hubs of corruption in the world. This is chaos of all kinds, so you will find yourself fighting anyone aligned with them, such as Dark Elves, Norska, Beastmen, Chaos, and even Skaven. Oxyotl's army can travel instantly to these missions, keeping his movement range, allowing him to teleport and instantly take out his targets if he is able. You can also instantly travel back to your faction capital and one Silent Sanctum that has the capstone of Tepok built. You may only travel when you are on land and in friendly or neutral territory, and you can only use this once per turn. The missions have several different tiers of difficulty, which is indicated by the border. You also have time limits for each mission, and failing to complete them in time means you will suffer the consequences, either via direct debuffs to your faction or massive debuffs to the target. However, if you get it done in time, you'll gain bonuses to your faction as well as some Sanctum gems. Additionally to these 2 mechanics, Oxyotl also has a couple of faction effects. All climates are suitable to him, so he can settle wherever he wants with no fear of debuffs. He also grants minus 25% upkeep for Skink and Chameleon Skinks, and +1 melee attack, defense, leadership, speed, and missile damage per XP rank for all Skink infantry. His personal armor is immune to trespassing penalties, so feel free to roam the map without fear of pissing anyone off. He has the Masterful Ambush stance, which requires less movement range and has a reduced detection chance. He grants 50% armor-piercing missile damage for all Skink infantry, and all units gain 200% XP when fighting Beastmen, Chaos, or Norska. And his starting units in both campaigns are Chameleon Stalkers, Shielded Saurus Warriors, and Chameleon Skinks. Now we come to the new units, starting of course with Oxyotl himself. He's a powerful skirmishing lord that doesn't have a lot of HP or armor, but you should remain hidden anyway due to his Vanguard deployment and stalk, so you don't really need it. His melee stats aren't too bad, and he does a decent bit of poison damage, but his true purpose is ranged skirmishing. He does a large amount of armor piercing, poison, and magical damage across a decent range, and can fire in any direction whilst moving. He's a fantastic choice for taking around with your other Chameleon Skinks to flank the enemy and shoot into the backs. Since he is only a single entity, you want him to focus down single targets, since his large damage won't be as efficient versus multiple entities. He also deals scaling damage, so the lower his target's HP gets, the more damage he does. Again, this makes him fantastic for being a large target assassin. He also has access to 2 abilities, Slippery and Master Predator. Master Predator is a toggleable augment that reduces his speed but grants him range, snipe, and unspottable, basically making him into a near invisible sniper. As for his skill tree, nothing too complicated. He has the unique Ancient Knowledge line, which allows him to passively earn Sanctum gems, increase the research rate, grant passive XP per turn, buffs when fighting chaos, ambush and stealth buffs, military buffs for the new units, and other army buffs both in campaign and battle. His unique top row buffs for ranged units are great. The enemy's weapons and poisons of the warp unlock you 2 banners which you can grant to your ranged units to allow them to do even more damage. He also spawns with 2 of these, so if you have 4 ranged chameleons, they can do some serious work. I like to build him like this. Blue line first, of course, basically getting whatever I could to get into Lightning Strike, replenishment and upkeep productions, as well as Renowned and Feared. I then get everything from his unique line because they're all very powerful. His unique top row buffs for ranged units are great, and then the red trait for his key units, which want to focus more on stealthy skinks. For his items, he has the golden blowpipe of Patui, which grants him range, reload time reduction, missile strength, and a magical missiles ability. The new hero type coming with this DLC is the Skink Oracle. This is basically a spellcaster mounted on a Troglodon. They are obviously big old dinos, so do massive damage in melee combat, with huge armor-piercing damage, as well as poison attacks in a large area of effect. They do good work versus pretty much any infantry you send them at, and they also have ranged attacks that deal huge poison, armor-piercing damage with a bonus versus large, so you want them to use the ammo before they head into melee to get the most out of them. You also want them to use their spells as much as possible to buff your troops and take out the enemy. They take a bit of micro since they can do so many things, but that does mean that they also can't really go wrong. They only have access to one ability, Bow Seeker. As for their skills, they are kind of similar to the Lore Masters of Hoeth. Their spell line is a mix of all the laws they have access to, so of course you want to get all of those as soon as possible. Increasing mobility is always a good thing, since an army that can cross the map is always great, and telepathic connections gets them another magical damage ability. The rest of the top row lets them get Vanguard and some stealth abilities, which makes them pair well with the rest of the new faction. Divinatory Authority has buffs for them in combat, both melee and ranged, and of course minor top row buffs for added toughness, and immortality is always a must. Our first new unit is the Chameleon Stalkers. They are a relatively cheap chameleon infantry that do surprisingly good damage. They aren't the toughest, but have medium armor and a good sized HP pool, so should be able to perform their job quite nicely. Plus, they have a nice little bit of resistance, both physical and ranged, so they are a lot tougher than they look. Their main power is their speed, which allows them to quickly get around the enemy front lines and into their backs. Combine this with their Vanguard deployment and stalk, and the enemy isn't going to know what hit them. Before they hit in melee, they can use their short range and low ammo explosive blowpipes to do some burst fire damage before they hit. Once they are in combat, they do poison damage, but don't have the best melee stats or armor piercing damage, so they won't rack up that many kills. Fortunately, their main power is surrounding the enemy lines, so they should break before you have to worry about their damage. Next up, we have the Coattack. This is a beautiful magical flying monster, and it has a couple of bound spells. It has 2 casts of Uranon's Thunderbolt, and 1 cast of Lesser Chain Lightning. Since it is a flying unit, it obviously has pretty great speed, and it also has decent toughness and a large but slender hitbox, so it should actually do pretty well against enemy ranged. It has decent melee stats and packs a punch, with a ton of armor piercing damage and magical attacks, meaning pretty much anything it goes against, it hits hard. It also causes terror, so anything it goes in on will be running before long, and it also has a 40-meter area of effect below itself that provides stalk to friendly ground troops, so it can escort some units where the enemy can't see them. And you can pull off some pretty ridiculous bullshit with this. Our final new unit is the Feral Troglodon. This is pretty much the Skink Oracle, but without the actual Oracle sat on top. It's literally the same, the only difference is that this one has 8 less HP and 5 less leadership, and is prone to going on a rampage. Use it just like you would the Oracle. Get it on the flanks of the enemy, or focus on large, high HP targets with their powerful ranged attacks before getting stuck into melee combat. As I said, you can't really go wrong with these guys, so just keep them fighting. Finally, we're also getting 3 Regiments of Renown. The Pale Death, which is a Regiment of Renown of the Feral Troglodon, loses 15 missile strength, but gains the Primeval Raw Augment ability. Geltblom's Terror is a Regiment of Renown Feral Carnosaur, and loses the Rampage, and gains Vanguard, Stalk, and Strider. Finally, the Spirit of Topok is a Regiment of Renown Coattack, and swaps his spells for 2 casts of Shield of Thorns and 1 cast of Lesser Banishment. And of course, it wouldn't be a breakdown of the brand new Lizardmen faction if I didn't tell you exactly where it ranks in the overall Legendary Lords ranking that I did for the Lizardmen. Now, the start location can be pretty tough, and it only gets easier once you have a powerful second army in your homeland, so for at least 50 turns, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. The faction mechanics are incredibly powerful and allow you to prepare regions for invasion and buff your units, and the enemy can't really do anything about it. The global presence is also really great, since Oxy can hop around the map at breakneck speed and either earn a bunch of cash or establish a worldwide empire. The climate preferences are incredible and get rid of a lot of the headache when deciding where to go. Now his army effects aren't incredible, but the skills Oxy himself can pick up make a mostly or even full skink army into something actually viable, which is a very unique and potentially powerful playstyle. Oxy himself is a brilliant large target assassin, but he doesn't really do much to help his army, since he can only engage one entity at a time and doesn't have abilities that buff his other units. Plus, him being the stealth character that he is, he's never near the front lines, keeping his troops confident where they need him. I think third place below Mazdamundi and just above Krotkar is about right, but on a fun and uniqueness scale, he's pretty much at the top of the lizards right now. And there we go, that concludes how to play Oxyotl, and of course all the new units that he is bringing with him. If you enjoyed this video at any point, then do be sure to leave it a like, it really does help out a lot. And if you want to see more videos like this, I have a review of this DLC coming on the 13th. Definitely be sure to subscribe to the channel because you won't want to miss a thing. I'd like to take this time to thank all supporters of the channel, in particular Kobe Said So, Nifty Norm. I really can't thank you guys enough for supporting me at that Unclean Ones tier. One more thank you to all of you for watching, and for now, I've been COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I will see you next turn.